Welcome everybody. I'm Mark Marquette from the American Space Museum. Let me do one little thing that I forgot about. This is non-profit Mark Marquette coming to you from the American Space Museum. Had to get our microphone here. Coming to you live on a special day. This is the 13th anniversary of dedicating the Apollo Monument out here at beautiful Spaceview Park. Marty Winkle's my producer and cameraman, former Apollo worker with Borman on the lunar module. His name's out here. He knew all these astronauts, or saw them as they want to reassure themselves that that lunar module was going to work. And no more important space flight than today, when 51 years ago, when Apollo 10 went into orbit around the moon. Now I know a lot of people go, oh, ho-hum. Well, ho-hum nothing. 51 years ago was the second time, Apollo 8 being the first, where we orbited humans around the moon, and this time they had with them the Grumman lunar module, the only spacecraft ever built to fly in space to this date. So that's exciting to me as Space Geek Mark coming to you here from downtown Titusville, Florida. It's 91 degrees on this May 22nd. So what is going on here is President Kennedy's behind me, and this beautiful sculpture by a lady named Sandy Storm. A tremendous project done by the U.S. Space Walk of Fame, where they broke ground on July 16, 1999, right where I'm standing, at exactly 30 years after the first liftoff of Apollo 11. At 9:32 a.m. They had all kinds of dignitaries and astronauts around me to break ground with our board of directors, and one of them on them still is Charlie Mars, and I think Lee Solid is also involved with that. They're on our board. Charlie's our chairman. Well, this kicked off 7 years to build this monument, okay? And had to raise about $1 million, and they had a lot of great donations. The people, trying to think of the people that devoted all the steel to us. Their last name's something Meyer. I apologize. They're out of Pennsylvania. I'll get that to you later. But had a lot of donations and money to build this. And as Marty pans out, you're going to see the big A for Apollo with the Earth and the Moon, and President Kennedy on a pedestal here, where his famous speech on May 25th, 1961 to Congress, where he says, I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the moon. Well, just 8 years later, we're doing the full dress rehearsal for this. It's never been done before.
Safely to the Earth.
With 3 other astronauts. Yes.
Return safely to the Earth.
The what?
Return safely to the Earth. Not
I can't.
Return safely to the Earth, not return safely to the moon.
Oh, I said return safely to the moon. All right, Marty's. Yep, I did say return safely to the Earth. Return safely to the moon. All right. That was what Kennedy said there, and you can read it. So, yeah, a lot of anniversaries here. 13 years ago, ground broke for this. It was actually dedicated, May of 2007 was the dedication of this. And here's President Kennedy. Such a likeness that Sandy Storm was told by people who saw this picture and showed it to Caroline Kennedy that she thought was one of the best likenesses of her dad she'd ever seen. And Sandy's still around. She was at one of our events not too long ago. And the relief work of this professional sculpture is just beyond compare when you witness it here, not only at the Apollo Monument, but over at the Shuttle Monument about 50 yards from me here, where Marty and I brought you a program just a couple weeks ago. So we're refining this outdoor deal. We hope to get a microphone that is more convenient to wear, but until then, we hope you're hearing us good. It's not too windy, but it's hot. And as I come in close again here, Marty, I'm going to leave this here. Yes. We have today in space history a happy birthday to this man with his wife. That is Bob Springer. Happy birthday, Bob. There we are. Well, let me get it like this way. Sorry. There we go. All right. Here's Bob Springer. He is 78 years old today. Bob has he was a pilot for 2 NASA missions, STS-29 and 38. And he's a Marine Colonel. Hoorah to you. Marty appreciates that, also a Marine. And Springer flew 550 combat missions in Southeast Asia. Wow, that's some scary flying, I'll bet. And then he strapped himself on the shuttle twice. He was pilot in STS-29 and 38 in the early 90s. Bob's hometown is Ashland, Ohio, though he was born in Patterson. So another Buckeye like myself that's gone to space. We love that. And he's been instrumental with his wife Debbie here. They're terrific people. They've been instrumental in raising money for the museum. And he signed autographs and took pictures at the 8K run last year that Marty Winkle, our cameraman, always is the coordinator for that. And our U.S. Space Walk of Fame 8K run, he's been part of that and other things. So happy birthday, Bob Springer. We love you and your wife, Debbie, and we can't wait to see you again. He certainly doesn't look his age. He's a great, vigorous man, and we wish him many, many more birthdays on this May 22nd, his 78th. So, I'm going to go over here and set my little microphone down here and grab a few notes, because I'm going to point out something that is so cool as you walk around this gigantic, I suppose it's 25 feet in diameter. Each panel, and Marty, we'll do this, Marty, and then we'll go to the handprints and the names. Each panel, okay, which you see, you know, I'm just under 6 feet tall, so they're nice big panels, heavy brass, all have this intricate relief on them. And Marty's going to zoom in on this one here, and I'm going to try to talk loud enough. Let's see if I can get my notes. I want to certainly get this right. Today, Apollo 10, all right, was orbiting the moon for the first time. And we might not, oh good, the sun's in shadow. We might not be orbiting the moon today, 51 years ago, had it not been for this man, John Humboldt, H-U-M-B-O-L-T. John Humboldt, right there. You see this photograph, it's famous. He is the man that came up with the lunar orbit rendezvous, where instead of sending one spacecraft that was going to land on the moon, like in all the science fiction movies, and then launch off in that same spacecraft, no, we were going to have two spacecraft, and we're going to separate and lunar orbit rendezvous up back from the moon. And this famous chart here, and John Humboldt there, is a very important part of American space history. Why we beat the Russians. We might not have, had his idea not prevailed, because as I understand it, talking to our space workers at the American Space Museum, you know, this was not an easy, oh yeah, slam dunk, that's the way we're going to do it. Everybody had their own idea of the rocket engineers, but this NASA rocket engineer prevailed. John Humboldt, beautifully shown here, of the dream, all right? And if you can see some of the other production of lunar modules, the individual people that are working on it, the workers on the bottom, acetylene torches, hard hats. And as I segue over here, Marty, the crowd that watched the launch, you know, fulfilling Kennedy's dream. This is such a beautifully displayed monument. I mean, I've got, you know, I got a lot of my life involved in loving the space, and you just can't believe the story this tells, and the true story of the space workers. And it goes all around it. Finally, the splashdown over here, and the dream comes true. And here is Humboldt's chart on we've got several of them hanging in our museum of this map of how we're going to go to the moon from the Earth, and everything moving in space at the same time. And the spacecraft going 30,000 miles an hour, having to slow down to 2,000 miles an hour to catch the lunar gravity. And this is the climax of it here, the splashdown of Apollo 11. And here's a Sikorsky UH-34 helicopter, accurately depicted, Marty tells me, because the Marines used them in Vietnam. And this was the helicopter used in Vietnam during the Gemini program. And Marty, proud of you being a veteran Marine. He was involved with that helicopter in a large way. So at any rate, we are here at this beautiful, pan out to this beautiful Sandmeyer. That's what it is. The Sandmeyer family in Pennsylvania are the ones that donated the steel for this beautiful A and the triangle over there to this shuttle monument. So if you know them, let them know we're giving them a shout out, as we do all of our people who support us on our Facebook, or not Facebook, on our website. 91 degrees, I better slow down a little bit here. But yes, we do have a wonderful website, frankly, very good. And our IT director, Bruce Jacobs, keeps up with that. And we're very grateful for his, just how he is so devoted to the American Space Museum. Thank you, Bruce Jacobs. But he's maintained that website for years. It's very informative. You can find out everything you want about us, including our upcoming space memorabilia auction, May 31st, a week from Saturday. We've got about 400 lots of space memorabilia, from autographs of these astronauts to things that flew in space and other items. So check that out, as well as our eBay presence that we sell a couple $1,000s a month, we hope, on eBay of space memorabilia. Well, I'm going to walk over here, Marty, and as we talk about, he moves in on me, why don't we start over here with, we are surrounded by some of the greatest astronauts of all time. Marty's going over here to Tom Stafford's handprints. I'm surrounded by Neil Armstrong, Tom Stafford, and Frank Borman. How about that? And if I was standing around them at an event, I'd probably be so flabbergasted I couldn't even talk to them, Marty. Could you imagine that? But truly space heroes of all of us watching this program today. Here is Tom Stafford's handprints. I'm going to put my hand on there. Tom's got a pretty, what I consider, well, that's smaller than mine. And you'll find that with a lot of our astronauts. If they were smaller in stature, the better off they could handle that confined space. But they signed all these, and again, our board chairman, Charlie Mars, had a lot to do with getting over 2/3 of the over 45 handprints we have. And he's writing a little book about it, and it'll be really interesting when that comes out, of getting the astronauts. In the 1990s is when they did these. Only place in the world you can put your handprint on Tom Stafford's handprint, all right? And there's Tom's picture. And these people up here that Marty's panning out to are space workers like Marty himself. A fundraiser part to build this wonderful Apollo monument was to give us $100, and we're going to put your name on a nice little stone plaque with who you work for, whether you work for NASA or a contractor like Boeing. And we owe a lot to Warren.
Lackey.
Yeah, Warren Lackey, thank you. Warren Lackey. He engraves these. He's the man that is the caretaker. He's a NASA worker himself. Warren Lackey, we thank you a lot. He's got a nice, warm family that supports our museum too. So these pylons, there's over there's over a dozen of them here in Spaceview Park, and we're in the section that is the Apollo workers. And any Apollo workers out there, we still have a lot of empty spaces for you. We'd be happy to have your $100 and then immortalize you on a wall out here in Spaceview Park. Now, imagine that. I've worked for Newsweek magazine in my 20s, like Marty was in his 20s working for Grumman, and they've not called me up, Newsweek, and said, hey, Mark, give us $100, we'll put your name on the building in Manhattan on Madison Avenue. Because if they did, I certainly would do that. So imagine, this is how we think about our space workers as well as the astronauts. There's George Page. I just noticed George Page there. Very important launch director. He launched the first and 3 shuttles. I'm checking here to make sure I didn't pull out the cord. Nope, I didn't. Sorry, thought I had a little flub there. And up here's Jack Weakland's up there. Jack Weakland worked for Bendix and Rockwell. He's a very important person, passed away now, but important person in our American Space Museum. One of his jobs was to take x-rays of all the spacesuits to make sure there were no needles or pins in them left by the SO workers. Well, let's go over here, Marty, and pan over here as he does. We're building a beach wave over there in the corner. And that might be a good thing for people coming and seeing our Space Museum. And you can go over to the new beach wave they're building right in front of the Max Brewer Bridge going to Playa Linda Beach, for those of you that have been here. Well, here's the man, Neil Armstrong. We also have a set of handprints of his in our museum, but we're not going to let you touch them for a while, because when we open June 1st, we're going to be very COVID conscious and we will require masks, though we respect your civil rights. We want you to respect our volunteers. Most of them, 80% of them, are retired in that pandemic wheelhouse that we can get it, including myself. So, but you'll have a great experience. You can come out here and put your hands on Neil's. God, that's hot. So there's no COVID on that because it can't survive at that temperature. But as you see here, are you in on that, Marty, Neil?
No, move your paper. Anyway.
Oh, move my paper. I'm sorry. Yeah. I think I don't need any more crib notes. I pretty much can wheel it here. Yeah, here's Neil's handprints. Okay, I consider myself a very average man. Okay, and his hands are a lot smaller than mine. So are Buzz's. Again, picture of Neil. All right, these hands were harvested before some of the astronauts died, like Gus Grissom and Ed White. But there's a beautiful relief profile of them on each of the monuments that Sandy Storm did. I can't emphasize enough how wonderful that lady's work is. It just comes to life, and all the astronauts look like themselves. So there's Neil. We had Tom Stafford over there, who 51 years ago was watching Gene Cernan at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon today get in that lunar module they called Snoopy, getting it ready to go down to the lunar surface tomorrow. But no, they were going to stop 8 miles short of the lunar surface because they didn't want to risk landing with some crazy anomaly happening on the way down, all right? And to that end, they let them know, we don't have enough fuel in the ascent module for you to get off the moon, that extra 8 miles. You guys do something crazy and think you're gonna pretend to crash on the moon, you ain't gonna get back, so don't think about it. And you laugh at that, but this is Tom Stafford and Gene Cernan, all right? Gene's two of the Group 2 astronauts that were the alpha dog males of a group of 24, all wanting to be the first man on the moon or the first one to rendezvous or do the lunar orbit rendezvous that Mr. Humboldt thought up in his head as the way to go. And it ended up being, actually I think Werner von Braun fought that John Humboldt quite a bit. Werner was for it?
No.
Yeah, I thought he did. Yeah,
no, he was not for it.
Oh, he was not for it.
He
was not for the LOA. He wanted to go the direct way. And so good history there about John Humboldt. Glad to share that with you, because that's what we want to do is take you a little bit inside some of the history you might not know about. But we're going to go over here to another tremendous American space hero who is 92 years old strong, Frank Borman, okay? Him and his buddy, Jim Lovell, orbited the moon with Bill Anders. All right, in 1968, Christmas Eve, that was the only mission that went to the moon before 51 years ago Apollo 10 did, but they didn't have the lunar module with them. So if they would have had a problem like Apollo 13 did, they would have died, because that lunar module became the life raft for Apollo 13. And like I said, 51 years ago, it was being used for the first time in lunar orbit to do a dress rehearsal down to 8 miles of the moon. I'm going to put my hands on Frank's there, and again, man, they really got tiny hands, okay? And flipping all them switches and stuff. And some we got better impressions than others, but they all signed it, and he was Gemini 7 with Jim Lovell, 14-day mission, then Apollo 8, another 9 or 10, 7 or 8 days to the moon, and then he retired, and you sometimes wonder why. He didn't want to, he certainly would have been a commander of a moon landing mission and walked on the moon. But that's the inner psyche of a lot of these astronauts that no one can crack, you know. Maybe you just come to a point where you say, I've had enough. Think of all that training and in those sweaty spacesuits and all the crazy things you have to do. that is the only job in the world like it, and maybe Frank just said he had enough, but a very smart man. He went on to be president of Eastern Airlines, and he was sitting beside Richard Nixon in the White House, giving Nixon commentary on the Apollo 11 landing. So Nixon had a blow-by-blow from Frank Borman of what was going on 2 months from now, 51 years ago, because the Apollo 10 okayed everything to go to the moon. Do a little history and look it up. These are some of the great guys, like I said. I'm surrounded by Neil and Tom Stafford and Frank Borman's handprints. But Tom Stafford and Gene Cernan were friends for the rest of their lives. Stafford built a tremendous museum that, in his hometown outside of Oklahoma City, Sweetwater. I've been there 3 times, okay. It's one of the most fabulous space museums I've ever seen on Interstate 40, so that's a plug for that. And he's still alive. I think Tom Stafford's 90 or 92, somewhere in there. I think he's 89, because Buzz has just turned 90. But he lives here in Melbourne on the Space Coast, and in Sweetwater with his museum and so forth. Great guy. And but him and Cernan talked every day building this museum and so forth until Gene died a couple years ago. And of course the other astronaut on board was Orlando native John Young. And John Young, this was his 3rd space flight. All right, he'd already done two Gemini, and this was his 3rd flight, and then on his 4th he'd walk on the moon with Apollo 16. So space history, Apollo 10, yes, I'm excited about it because this only happened 6 landings, and this one in Apollo 8, so 8 times in the last half century this has happened. And we'll share a little more of that with you on Facebook about what went wrong on that when they separated in lunar orbit, going down, barnstorming the moon, and all of a sudden they came within separating the ascent stage like they would as if they were on the moon, and something wild happened to Snoopy. That was the name of that lunar module number 4 that Grumman built, and the orbiting the moon was John Young and Charlie Brown. Those were the call signs. Stay tuned, tomorrow we'll tell you a little more about that. I'm going to end with one little note. If you have a clear sky tonight, some astronomy of course, you look at the planet Venus. We've been talking about it for months, all right? If you don't look at it tonight and tomorrow night, you're not going to see Venus tomorrow. I mean next week. Venus and the star next to it is going to be the planet Mercury. And Mercury's hard to see, but Venus and Mercury are in what astronomers call a conjunction. They're going to be within 1 degree of each other, which your fist spread out like that's about 10 degrees, okay? So Venus and Mercury, a great chance to see both of them. You shutterbugs out there, get your cameras and tripods and get a cool shot of that against some landscape. I'm going to try to, unless it's raining here on the Space Coast, because we're approaching that hurricane season and rainy season. So I'm getting all my stargazing in, and Marty and I are getting our outdoor presentations to you in. We hope to come back to you again next week from another great monument here at Spaceview Park to help you stay curious. Mark Marquette saying goodbye, be safe with everyone, and thank you to Marty and all of everyone else that makes this possible. Have a great day.